In the dying light of a crimson sun, desperation wore the face of genius. The holographic projections flickered and died. Again, another trajectory, another failure. Jor-El's fingers trembled across the console, equations consuming every waking moment. How many times? How many desperate calculations? The ship can barely contain him. Jor-El whispered. We should have had fleets, Lara. Instead, we have this single vessel. Lara's fingers found his. In that touch, hope, stubborn as love itself. At least Kal-El will have a chance, she said. At least our son will live. Our son. Their child would inherit not just their love, but their exile. Their legacy would be his loneliness. Lara programmed the navigation interface, encoding hope into the ship's consciousness, teaching it to seek not just survival, but belonging. For centuries we searched, Jor-El murmured. We sent signals into the void. The universe answered with silence. And now we're sending our most precious cargo into that same silence. Lara's eyes held different knowledge, that the greatest acts of love require the greatest leaps of faith. She couldn't watch their son die, not when the alternative still breathed with possibility. Time. So little left, measured now in heartbeats before their world would tear itself apart. For 10,000 orbits, a shining planet circled a celestial font of heat and light. The people of that world grew tired of war, so they achieved a united society. They feared the unknown, so they conquered it with marvels of science. They yearned for heaven, so they created it beneath their very feet. The red dwarf star that had been their beacon for 10,000 orbits now seemed a mockery of hope. Lara's voice cut through his despair. Make room for this. A tablet, hologlyphic chronicles of their dying civilization, meant as a birthday gift, now a final inheritance. History reduced to data, love compressed into symbols. Together they lifted Kal-El for the last time. The building shuddered, foundations cracked. Jor-El placed their son into the vessel as towers collapsed around them. One final calculation. His fingers moved across the star maps, searching for a world where Kal-El might not just survive, but thrive. Earth, a young planet orbiting a yellow sun. Perfect. The ecology would become his armor. His Kryptonian cells would drink in solar radiation, strengthening muscle, sharpening senses, hardening skin. What made him alien there would make him extraordinary. Goodbye, my son. The ship launched into dying light. Through the void it traveled, life support bleeding away with each passing hour. 2% power remaining when Earth's blue marble filled the viewport. Cloaking engaged, atmosphere breached. And in that burning descent, a god fell to Earth, disguised as hope. 25 years later, Clark saved Kobe Asuru from the gunman's bullet. In the aftermath, another weapon turned toward him. This stranger, this impossibility who had appeared from nowhere, always the same choice. Reveal yourself or let innocence die. They searched his bag, passport, the tablet, Kryptonian history disguised as earthly technology. No weapons needed when you are the weapon. He came to talk, Clark said simply. It's an honor to meet the Guri tribe's favorite son and activist, though he wasn't sure what Asuru stood for. Asuru led him to the watering hole. No racial barriers here, he explained, but men find other ways to discriminate. The Turaba rule this region. They teach children they are inferior from birth, that they exist to serve. Power corrupts, but powerlessness destroys. This is what I fight to change, Asuru continued, what I must change. Abina stepped forward, her eyes sharp with suspicion. Who are you really?
Freelance reporter. As you saw from my credentials when you turned my backpack inside out. I filed stories for small newspapers on pretty much every continent. To be honest, this is my biggest assignment yet.
The Ghana paper has sent me here to profile Kobe. Maybe look into these attacks.
Do you know Lois Lane? Abina asked. The name hit him unexpectedly. Clark knew her work, had followed her fearless pursuit of truth across continents. But he'd never met her, though something whispered he'd love to. How long have you been traveling? Mr. Asuru asked, studying Clark's face.
Let's see. Graduated high school in Smallville, Kansas at 18. Left 2 wonderful parents and a farm to study abroad. Finally strung together enough visiting student credits from various universities to earn a bachelor's in journalism just shy of 25, which comes next month.
Clark mentioned to Abina that he was adopted, searching for his place in the world, when time slowed. A glass tumbled toward Abina from behind. His hand moved faster than thought, catching it before impact. Mr. Asuru spoke of heritage, of traditions woven into party masks and ancient clothing. When bullets shattered the moment, glass exploded, wood splintered. Clark moved. Heat vision sealed a woman's wound. Precise, careful, unnoticed. But the shooters had planned for this. They waited at the back exit. He ran toward the gunfire, covering Asuru and Abena as bullets found his back. Pain that should have dropped him felt like raindrops. Into the vehicle, away from death. The Turaba want me dead, Asuru explained as they fled. They think I've forgotten my place. But in 2 days we march to Miyota. We stand before the men who govern our republic and demand representation. Clark nodded. Asuru wasn't a hero, just a man trying to make change for his people. Dear Ma appeared on the screen. Such simple words, yet they carried the weight of everything he couldn't say. He could feel the jungle pulse around him, every living thing glowing with light only he could see. Colors that had no names painted halos around every living thing. Soul fire, life bloom, radiant crowns of existence made visible. Clark wasn't sure if it was souls or auras, until they died. Then the light flickered out, leaving only emptiness that carved hollows in his chest. He typed about the tablet. The holographic projections had filled his quarters with ghostly images of Krypton, millennia of history, civilizations rising and falling. Through it all, one constant, the symbol, his symbol. Not just a family crest, but something far greater. Cities built around it, wars fought for it. The phrase appeared on screen, a symbol of hope, and Clark felt its weight settling on his shoulders like armor. His people had died for this symbol, believing tomorrow could be better than today. And here he sat, using his gifts to hide rather than inspire. He wrote about his new friend, Kobe Asuru. You've probably seen him in the news. The irony cut deep. Kobe's face was known worldwide for his courage, while Clark crouched in shadows, practicing deception. Each time he'd been forced to act to save a life, the aftermath was always the same. Fear, suspicion. What else is he hiding? The very people he saved looked at him differently, and the knife turned in his chest with each revelation. His fingers hesitated over the keys. I'm keeping my abilities secret mostly. Please don't tell Pa. But perhaps there was another way. The alien images showed him glimpses of possibility, a path that didn't require choosing between helping and hiding. 2 identities perhaps, one to live among the people he protected, another to stand as hope made manifest. He finished typing. I have to go now. Give my love to Pa. He had to meet with the leader of the Turaba. The Turaba leader's voice carried the weight of generations. Clark sat across from him, listening as the man spoke of his people's long struggle to make this land what it was today. The Guri, he explained, were settlers. Latecomers to soil the Turaba had watered with their blood. The leader's tone suggested that allowing the Guri to work for them was no small concession. That should be benefit enough.
Latecomers. They've been here generations, Representative Kabil. And no one's advocating a coup, merely fair representation in their government.
Give an inch. Mr. Kennedy Guri desire recognition. For what? Bottom feeding? We are content to let them be. We insist upon the same courtesy. Asuru's ideas are dangerous and substantially threaten our way of life.
As the Turaba leader finished off by telling Clark that they will not be bullied, one of the leader's bodyguards handed him a phone, but Clark recognized his face. It was the same man that had shot at them previously. Clark returned to Kobe and his people with urgency weighing his steps. The march had to be called off, but before he could explain, Abina's voice cut through the air like a blade. Traitor. The word hung between them, sharp and unforgiving. In her eyes, he had chosen the Turaba's side, but Clark pressed on. They should still go, he explained, but differently, smaller. The Turaba were waiting for a fight, expecting the spectacle of confrontation. A large protest would give them exactly what they wanted, an excuse for violence. Kobe listened, weighing the wisdom against the risk. Finally, he decided to go alone. Just him, speaking truth to power while the world watched. Clark had called in favors. Reporters would be there, cameras rolling, witnesses to whatever unfolded. The day came. Kobe got up to say his speech, telling everyone that conflict exists with or without him, anywhere where man thinks himself superior to others. In that moment, Abina found Clark in a panic. The Turaba men were destroying their homes and village. Clark used his powers, seeing exactly what was happening in the village. Families huddled in terror, homes reduced to ash. 25 years on this world, and he still felt like a stranger watching humanity tear itself apart. Clark grabbed Abina, telling her not to tell Kobe about any of this. That was what the Turaba wanted. But Abina still wanted to tell her brother, her loyalty torn between Kobe's message and her people's suffering. That's when Clark decided to grab Abina and fly toward the village. Meanwhile, the Turaba waited for Abina to call Kobe away from his speech. When she didn't, they moved to their backup plan. On live television in front of the gathered crowd, they had Kobe arrested. No charges mentioned, no explanation given. Just the cold efficiency of power silencing truth. Back in the village, the Turaba set fires everywhere. They waved their guns at anyone and everyone. Children, elders, mothers clutching their babies. The acrid smoke of burning homes mixed with the bitter taste of fear. Until Clark intervened. He moved through them like judgment itself, his powers unleashed with surgical precision. Each Turaba gunman fell, their weapons useless against something beyond their comprehension. But even as Clark finished off the last of them, his enhanced hearing caught something that made his blood freeze. On the television broadcast, as Kobe's arrest was being filmed, the Turaba leader's bodyguard had moved. A blade found its mark in Kobe's side, quick and discreet. The cameras couldn't see the assassination, but the wound would bleed out slowly, inevitably. Abina fought Clark as he grabbed her and flew back toward Kobe, her fists pounding against his chest, demanding answers he couldn't give. But Clark's focus was singular now, a race against time and the cruel mathematics of blood loss. He arrived to find chaos, a getaway car speeding toward escape, Kobe on the ground, his life seeping away with each labored breath. Clark's heat vision turned steel to slag, the car's engine exploding in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. The assassin stumbled out, and Clark's hands found him, lifting him, throwing him into the nearest tree with enough force to rattle his bones. The demand came from somewhere deep in Clark's chest, a growl that barely sounded human. Who had done this? Who had ordered it? The broken man's finger trembled as it pointed toward the Turaba leader, Kabile. But when Clark turned to Kobe, when he knelt and took the dying man's hand in his own, he felt the terrible weight of arrival too late. Clark watched as the glow from around Kobe's body vanished. Clark Kent had saved a village, but he had failed to save the man who could have saved a nation. Clark and Abina stood at Kobe's grave.
You're not the first, Abina. You're scared of me now. Don't worry. I won't stay.
Abina looked at Clark with something he had never seen before in her eyes. Fear, not of the Turaba, not of the violence that had torn through their world, but of him. Her voice came small and uncertain, weighted with the kind of questions that follow tragedy. If the Guri was silent now, she asked, would their debt be paid? Clark told her quietly there was no debt to be paid. There never had been. But Abina's real question cut deeper. Why couldn't he have saved Kobe?
I had no choice, Abina. I had to save the people he wanted saved. I miss him too. Kobe Asuru will be remembered as a great man with a simple legacy. He was who he was, and the world will be a better place for it.
3 days later, Kansas. Jonathan Kent struggles with seed bags at his truck. Before he can register the effort, they're stacked, neat, orderly. Clark sits on top of them, hands with a grin on his face. Jonathan turns, weathered face breaking into genuine happiness. No surprise at the impossible efficiency, only understanding. They head inside to Martha in her little hobby room, surrounded by alien research scattered across every surface. She lights up seeing Clark. Clark asks about town with careful casualness. Jonathan cuts through pretense. Don't beat around the bush. They know he wants to know about Lana Lang. The name settles between them like dust. Clark feels something tighten in his chest. Not physical pain, but the ache of possibility lost. No one's heard from her for years, but Lex has shown up in Metropolis, started his own company. Clark's oldest friend transformed into something else entirely. The three reminisce about simpler times, voices weaving through shared memories like sunlight through wheat. But then Jonathan's tone shifts, wondering aloud what the world would be like if they knew about Clark's abilities. The question hangs in the air like a storm cloud gathering strength. Clark's jaw tightens. "Follow me." He leads them to the barn. His hands dig beneath weathered floorboards until metal gleams in dim light. The spaceship, his first cradle, final link to a dead world, emerges from Kansas soil. From within its alien curves, Clark retrieves a quilt. Not the patchwork comfort of earthly hands, but something else entirely. The symbol emblazoned across its surface catches the light. His parents stare at the mark that will one day make the world look up in hope and terror.
It's still here. The banner. Good. It's been on my mind. Its colors. Its insignia. Clearly this meant a great deal to my forefathers. Well, it's time it meant more to me.
Clark's parents see the decision in his eyes, but confusion clouds their faces. What is he trying to say? The words come slowly, heavy with years of restraint. They always taught him to do right by people, but his hands have been tied by secrecy. In Africa, something horrible happened, but for one moment, when called upon to give everything, Clark felt part of something larger, not watching from the sidelines. He wants that feeling again. No more running from who he really is. His gaze falls to the quilt in his hands, then rises to meet his mother's eyes. He knows exactly where to start, and he needs her sewing skills to make it happen. Each stitch bound two worlds together, the one where Clark belonged and the one where he never could. For the first time, he wouldn't have to hide his abilities. But Jonathan stood in the doorway like a storm cloud, unhappiness carved into weathered features. Jonathan's footsteps retreated down the hallway. In Clark's childhood room, he traced pencil marks on the doorframe, measurements at different ages, reminders of how quickly the boy had grown. The ceiling crack caught his eye, damage from when Clark turned 4, jumped and hit the ceiling. Birthday photos lined the dresser like evidence of a life lived in careful restraint. When Jonathan returned, he asked Clark to help fix the barn's center beam and the tractor. Clark promised to do it right away. Then, Clark showed Martha the tablet, revealing costume designs inspired by great men from his history. Scientists with star-distant eyes, explorers who had mapped infinity, warriors who had stood against dying light. He couldn't understand the text, but the images told their own story of his race, the ones who had sent him to Earth. Clark felt their purpose flowing through him. They wanted him to carry on for them here. If he followed this path, everything would fall into place. But that's when he heard it, the tractor starting up. Enhanced hearing caught the familiar rumble, the mechanical strain. Lost in exploring another planet with his mother, it had completely slipped his mind.
Sorry, Pa, lost track of time. But Ma and I are making real headway. Pretty soon,
you can go play acting in your little costume. That's great.
Night fell, but sleep wouldn't come. In their bedroom, Martha confronted Jonathan. She confronted Jonathan about his treatment of Clark since his return. Jonathan insisted nothing was wrong, but Martha pressed. Clark was navigating profound changes, discovering his destiny and heritage. He needed his father to speak with him, to remind him he was still one of them. Jonathan's response cut through the darkness like a blade. Clark wasn't one of them. Never had been. The words hung in the air, shocking Martha into silence. What she didn't know was that outside, enhanced hearing had caught every syllable. Each word landed like a physical blow against Clark's ribs. Sometimes the truth we fear most comes wrapped in the voice we trust most. Clark slipped into the barn's shadows. His hands found the ship's hull, and he focused his microscopic vision, developed last year, on the craft that had carried him across the void.
7 years. Long time to be gone, son. And every year we saw you less.
I wrote, sent email. Pa read it, right?
Martha mentioned she'd read Jonathan the emails, but Clark couldn't understand his father's coldness. Fear crept through him. Did Jonathan feel differently now than before? Was it the long absence or something deeper? Martha had no answers. Jonathan walked in, claiming he didn't want to get in the way of what they were doing. Clark confronted him directly. Did he have an issue with their work? Jonathan's response cut like winter wind. If Clark could help people, he should. Who was Jonathan to approve or disapprove? He turned to leave, mentioning fence posts that needed fixing. Clark offered to help. Jonathan turned him down. Martha called Clark away. Alone with the ship, Jonathan stared at his hammer. The same tool that had built this barn, fixed countless problems, shaped a life of honest work. He swung with all his strength straight at the alien craft. The roof began caving in, timber and metal groaning under impossible forces. But Clark moved faster than falling debris, flying through the barn wall to catch his father before the collapse could claim him. Suspended in midair, Jonathan dangled in his son's arms while destruction reigned below. Clark's voice carried hurt and confusion. Why had he hit the spaceship? Jonathan only wanted to be put down.
Clark, put me down. Not until you talk to me. Pa, I know you and that's not you. Why were you wailing on the rocket? No good reason. Pretty damn fool thing to do. Won't happen again. Pa, stop looking so nervous. I'm not going to drop you, you know. You've never been up here before. Nope. I've never taken you. It never occurred to me that you'd want to.
Fly? Why wouldn't I? Guess you don't know me as well as we thought, huh? Don't feel bad, Clark. That's my fault. And now I'm paying for it. I failed, Clark. I wanted to be your real father.
You are my...
No. I tried. But a dad's job is to give his son. Pass along what he knows, and enough of who he is to matter. That's their bond. And if ours was that strong, 7 years apart wouldn't wipe it out.
Clark flew down with his father. Jonathan's words came haltingly. He hadn't wanted to believe their bond was broken, but when Clark came home saying he didn't want his name, wanting to create a new identity, it had hurt. Clark wasn't like him, not like a man who left home at 18 to find his place in the world. But Clark told his father he'd gotten the courage to do exactly that from him. They found Martha stitching the costume. Clark explained he didn't want to stop being Clark Kent. He wanted a dual identity. Martha misunderstood, suggesting a mask, but Clark insisted he needed to show his face to build trust. Martha proposed changing Clark Kent's appearance instead. Different looks, different styles, until something clicked. But it was missing something. Then Martha took Jonathan's glasses and placed them on Clark. The prescription was strong, but Clark adjusted his vision. The disguise's only purpose was to go unnoticed. This achieved that. His parents worried that surrounding himself with reporters might be dangerous, but Clark insisted he could handle it. Then he worried, if anyone discovered the truth, his parents would face government scrutiny. They assured him not to worry. His whole life he'd protected them. Now he needed to focus on himself.